Order, roll call, please.
Miranda. Maniscalco. Hurtak. Young. Vieira. Carlson. And Clendenin.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
And Councilman Carlson will be back. He's just not back yet, but he was supposed to be back after lunch. Councilwoman Hurtak?
I request to reschedule item number 32 to March 5th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion to reschedule item 32 to March 5th from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you,
And
Councilwoman
then
Hurtak.
motion to open the public hearings.
We have a
1:35.
motion to open the public hearings from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. And we are skating right along to item number 31. Oh, we have to be sworn in first. Okay, so we're going to swear everybody in first. Everybody who's here to speak to item 31, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by our clerk.
Anybody who's going to talk.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
And I had this card from Frank Logan. Is he here? Frank Logan? Okay, very good. I just want to make sure that you were here because I had your card. I held on to it just knowing that you were here. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. You're on.
Good afternoon. Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the Legal Department. I'm here for item number 31, which is a review hearing for the file number SU1 2577 for the property located at 2924 East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The petitioner for this matter is Daniel Anderi, and he applied an application with the zoning department for a dwelling single-family detached unit. That decision was denied by zoning staff, and Laura Marley will be appearing to explain why that application was denied. I've provided, hopefully Mr. Shelby has passed out the packets, thank you, that include the rules of procedure for City Council to use in order to conduct this review hearing. I've also provided a copy of Code Section 27-61, which governs the process for this review hearing. And I've also provided a sample motion for City Council to use regarding this matter. As outlined in Code Section 27-61, subsection J3, this is a de novo review hearing, which means City Council can accept new evidence and take testimony regarding this matter. At the conclusion of this hearing, City Council can take two actions at the conclusion after you hear from the witnesses regarding this application. City Council can affirm the decision of the zoning administrator or overturn the decision of the zoning administrator. I'm here if you have any questions at any time, but I would like to turn it over to Ms. Laura Marley, who will give a background of the application along with the reasons why the application for the dwelling single-family detached was denied. And just for reference, in these staff's report, she included Code Sections 27-132 that provides the two requirements for this type of use. And so please use that in the staff report as the two requirements. It does meet one of the requirements, but we're here because it does not meet the other requirement. Okay.
Thank you very much. And, Marley, before we get to you, Mr. Shelby.
Did you have comments? Did you want me to?
Yes, I did.
Because one of the things I want to ask at this time, Council, if there have been any ex parte communications relating to this issue, that you disclose that at this time, including with whom and the sum and substance of that communication.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much. So I've submitted any and all, to the extent I have any, regarding this. I did want to, and I spoke with Mr. Shelby about this, our attorney, because of my involvement with this effort. A couple of things. Number one, in the budget, we had secured, and I worked with the Portico on securing funds for a housing program that could potentially be connected to this. So number one, I want to disclose that. I've discussed that with Mr. Attorney Shelby. That does not constitute a conflict such that I cannot vote on it. If so, that would be true for all of us. Number two is Pastor Justin LaRosa, who's here, who's a wonderful man, had called me a few times regarding procedure on this hearing. At the time, I didn't know it was going to go to city council, neither did he. And so we've had discussions on the procedure on it, not on the substance of it, in terms of the merits of the case or anything of that nature, just a procedure. And then number three, on a personal basis, I have volunteered a number of times with the Portico and done civic and community events with them, just to disclose that. So I put that out there. I believe I can vote pursuant to the ethical standards, but I just wanted to, out of an abundance of caution, disclose that.
Okay, well, first of all, you then don't have any direct financial affiliation with this particular project
No.
that's before you?
No, sir,
Okay.
no.
Nor does a relative or a principal,
No,
is that
sir,
correct?
no.
Okay. And number two is then, can you be fair and impartial and base your decision on the competent substantial evidence
Yes,
that's in the
sir.
record?
I believe I can.
Then it's my professional opinion that under Florida statutes, you have an obligation to vote.
Councilman Carlson?
Yeah, I guess the same thing. We're on the Portico one. Yeah. So the Portico is owned by the church that I'm a member of, is Hyde Park United Methodist, and also I put on events at the Portico occasionally, including a weekly event that's technically booked through a nonprofit, Cafe con Tampa. So I don't have any business relationship with them. I give money to them, but I'm not personally involved. I also have given speeches there on affordable housing and homeless issues and things like that, but I don't have any, it's the other way. I give them money, I don't get money from them.
Okay, and with regard to the issue that's before you today, you don't have a financial interest, nor does a relative or your company
No.
relating to this matter. Okay, and can you, based on the competent and substantial evidence in the record, be fair and impartial and base your decision on that?
Yes.
Okay, then, again, it is my opinion, my professional opinion, that you have an obligation to vote. There is no conflict of interest that warrants you abstaining.
And I should also say, this idea didn't come from me, probably didn't come from, I don't know where it came from, but I had nothing to do with the proposal.
Any other ex parte communications? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, hearing nothing else, we're going to move on to our staff presentation. Ms. Marley. You're on mute.
Can I share my screen, please?
Okay, there you go. We're waiting for the screen. There we go. We see the screen on the, can we get it on the council monitors as well? And if we flip screens between Ms. Marley and the presentation on the council monitors, please. And there we go. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you. SU 1-2577, the petitioner is Daniel Aderi. The property owner is Portico Housing Solutions, Inc. The property address is 2924 East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The zoning is commercial general. The special use request is for dwelling single-family detached. Here's the aerial of the property. As you can see, the property is outlined in red. It's right next to the railroad tracks. This is a view of the property from East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. As you can tell, right now it is vacant. Here is a picture of the site plan. It is a small site, but they have a design exception through urban design for the East Tampa overlay. They reduced their front setbacks, side setbacks, and reduced the parking to one space. That application was approved by the urban design manager at the time. And these are the code requirements. The request for a dwelling single family is the proposed use must be located to residential uses on at least two boundaries. There is one residential to the east of this property. All the others are commercial. And the single family that is an existing dwelling may be expanded. It doesn't meet these because it's a vacant site. The single family will meet the setbacks for the East Tampa overlay district. And any questions, I'm available.
Does council have any questions? So just confirm that one side is the railroad tracks, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Does that conclude staff's presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Applicant, petitioner. You start with your name, please.
Daniel Anderi, 1308 West Cypress, Tampa, Florida.
I'm sorry, I wanted to amend. If I may, Mr. Shelby,
Councilman Vera.
that I forgot, we spoke about this, correct, at the portico on Sunday morning one day,
Yes,
wasn't
about
it?
the procedure. of-
Okay, good.
Yes.
Just to amend, it wasn't just Pastor La Rosa, I just remembered, that's all. Thank you.
A face is worth 1,000 dollars. Okay, start your name again, please.
Yes. Daniel Anderi, 1308 West Cypress, Tampa, Florida. Good afternoon, City Council. We are here today to discuss the SU1 application at 2924 East MLK Boulevard. Laura did a great job presenting our initial application. I just wanted to provide a little background and history to this case. This property, since 1926, has had a single-family home structure on it. Up until May of 2024, when there was a fire on the adjacent vacant property to the west, which then destroyed the single-family home on the subject property. The damages from the fire and the smoke were substantial enough that the owner, which is Portico Housing Solutions, decided that it was best to demolish the structure with the intent to always try and rebuild another single-family home on this property. That really brings us here to today. Given that the underlying zoning is commercial general, we would require an SU1 application. And given how the current zoning code's reading with section 27-132 underneath the single-family dwelling requirements, we do not meet the technical requirements in order to restore this property back to its original use. With that, specifically on section 27-132, subsection A is the requirement we are looking for support for approval for. We do not, or this parcel is not adjacent to residential uses. There's a vacant commercial lot to the west, a railroad to the east, and then a church to the north and northwest. And with that, we are here, I guess, requesting approval. Myself and also co-founder of Portico Housing Solutions, Justin LaRose, are available for comments and questions.
Council have any questions? Are you with the applicant?
Pardon me?
You're with the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes,
I'll start with your
absolutely.
name, please.
Justin LaRosa, and I'm one of the co-founders of Portico Housing Solutions, and just wanted to clarify one thing and then add something as you all deliberate. So Portico Housing Solutions is a separate 501c3, different than the Portico. The Portico is the Portico Initiatives connected to Hyde Park United Methodist Church, whereas Portico Housing Solutions has no connection to Hyde Park United Methodist Church. So one clarification there. And then also, Daniel did a good job of overviewing. The fire in the adjacent lot was discovered by the fire marshal not to be connected with us in any way, shape, or form. And so our hope, Portico Housing Solution is about bridging formerly homeless men to transformation through employment, support, case management, and counseling. And we've had, since 2016, we've been helping folks do that. And so this is one of our properties that did that, and we're hoping to continue to do that as well. I also know that the church is here and forced to provide some of their own commentary around why it shouldn't be done. And Pastor Frank Logan is here, and we've had conversations. We disagree, and but we've been respectful the whole time with one another. And what I would say to you is there are no police calls out to this residence, and and Pastor Frank reached out to me in August 9th, 2014, to purchase the property for their church parking lot. So that's other information, and I can answer questions after they speak. So thank you very much.
Since you brought up the church, where is the church related to your property?
It's kind of Daniel will show you.
Yeah, you can zoom in on the top, very top, there's a wheel. Other way, there you go. There you go.
Very old school. To the northwest is where the church is. In the small dashed red line is the parcel.
So that triangular
Yeah,
right? is
it's
the
an
church?
irregular shaped lot, triangular.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Is that complete? Does that finish your
Yes.
presentation? You'll have an opportunity to add additional rebuttal
Okay.
if you need it.
Thank you.
No, that's it. That's the Post Church. Okay, thank you.
You done with it?
Okay, very good. Okay, this is an opportunity now for the public to speak. If you wish to speak, if you would like to line up on the side, I'll call you up one at a time. You'll have 3 minutes each, and you'll start with your name. So anybody that wishes to speak to this application, we can start with number one. Anybody else wants to line up, if they want to be in order, they're welcome to do that. Yes, Pastor. Yeah, flip it up the other side. There we go. And you can zoom back out if you want to show more, if that's enough. And can we get the Wolf on the public monitors, please?
Thank you very much.
There we go.
Okay. So thank you very much, Council. My name is Frank Logan. I'm a Tampa resident and pastor of Faith, Hope, and Love Ministries, a church that is located directly to the north side of the property. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to voice our concerns. There are concerns of myself and also my congregation, who are represented by a few of us who are here today. First, I want to make it clear that we are not against development. We are not against housing. We believe in thoughtful growth that protects residents and strengthens neighborhoods. I personally met with Pastor Justin. We have had respectful conversations. After the property had the fire, I did reach out and see if it was available for us to purchase for a parking lot. But we are here today because we want to explain some of the history that we had with the property. The history of this property has given us real public safety concerns. The property was previously occupied, functioning as what we understand to be a transitional home, which had frequent turnovers and patterns that disrupted the area. We do support such programs, but the city also has a responsibility to consider the real impact of the properties on the surrounding neighborhood. So the backyard of this particular home, it faces one of the entrances to our church. And many of my congregants would come to me complaining that after their prayer sessions, when they exit the church, they would smell different kind of smoke and things in the air from the activity that was going on in the backyard. And there was also a lot of traffic around the house. There wasn't adequate parking, so there would be cars that would be parked on the vacant lot that is also adjacent to the house and our church as well. And these things caused us concern. So we believe that this house is not compatible with the neighborhood as it exists today. As it was mentioned, the house was built back in 1926, and back then the area was residential, but since then it has dramatically changed. Today the lot sits right next to our church, which serves the children, families, seniors, and holds different prayer sessions throughout the week. So I want to point out that this is a significant issue to us because of the community that we serve. We don't want to take Tampa back to 1929. We want to make sure that we are looking towards the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Next speaker, please. Start with your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Johnny Cortinas. I'm a part of the Faith, Hope, and Love Ministry congregation. And I know this hearing is about the dwelling itself, zoning, commercial general. And that's very important in consideration of to build the building or the house. But I think beyond the building of the, unit, we have to also consider what the Tampa Comprehensive Plan includes, where commercial general property can include residential, but I think this particular property close to the tracks in that street that it's in, it's a high volume traffic street. And I maintain the grounds at the church, and I maintain the grounds early in the morning, midday, during the week. It's very high traffic. So once a family occupies that property, it's a family dwelling, then the safety of the family and the consideration of the location. I've been in different communities. I've owned homes. I've been in housing through the Air Force, where I've been Air Force, retired Air Force, and participated in different communities, rentals, owning houses, and I see a safety concern beyond the dwelling being built. Reference the traffic and even the noise from the tracks and the railroad train. So in consideration with that, I think in moving forward and considering how Tampa Comprehensive Plan 2040, I think that this particular consideration should be also very thoughtful in regards to the safety of the families that would occupy it, either individual owner or the property being rented out, that the task and burden is being put on the families regarding the traffic and the noise. I've been in different communities where I've seen signs, slow down, children at play, and then also speed bumps in the community. I don't see that happening in the Martin Luther King Street for the traffic that there is there. So I recognize that this proposal has been declined already by the 27-132, but I want to also consider the fact that beyond the building, there's also considerations for the families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Start with your name. Were you sworn in? When we started? Okay. Raise your right hand.
You're talking to me?
Anybody in the audience that's come in since we
Oh,
sworn in?
okay.
If you're planning on speaking, if you'd raise your right hand to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Okay, start with your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Shalette Davis. I run a small nonprofit, Love Inc. of Metro Tampa. And I'm just really here to just speak, from my heart in support of Portico Housing Solutions, and really just want to talk about the difference it's made, not only in the lives of the clients that we serve, but just in the lives of these homeless working men. I've been connected to this ministry since its inception. I, had the privilege of working for Hyde Park United Methodists and their justice ministry, and we actually worked with a lot of these gentlemen whenever they were going through the burdens of fines and fees, in partnership with Love Inc. at that time. Mr. Michael Doyle, along with Mr. Thad Baraday, who was a volunteer for Love Inc., helped gentlemen who actually lived in this home regain some sense of financial freedom and allowed them to earn a driver's license again. Just recently, just in the last year, I've had to turn to Portico Housing to help me house an 82-year-old gentleman who I found out in the freezing cold one January. And it broke my heart because this man had worked his entire life. He was a professor, had advanced degrees. He worked his entire life, and we found him out in the freezing cold because he could not afford to rent his place anymore. And it was because of Portico Housing Solutions that we were able to find just that bridge, that emergency housing for this gentleman, to give him some refuge out of the cold and give us enough time to regroup, collaborate together, and find a more permanent housing solution for him. And we're still working with this gentleman. So I understand that neighbors may perceive things to be happening, you know, at this property. I wasn't there, I can't say anything about that. I honestly know that there are people working with these people, and I personally haven't heard anything in terms of troubles like that, because these houses are set up to be sober living. And I just hope that whatever decisions you make today will be a decision to support the futures of working homeless men here in the city of Tampa. So,
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the public that wishes to speak to this item? Okay, now we're going to go to additional staff comments. I actually have I have a question for staff. Marley, are you on? Ms. Marley?
Yes, I am.
Can we get her image on the council? There we go. Thank you so much. Can you put up a overhead of the neighborhood and kind of give us a sense of the current use of property in that block and across the street? Like what?
Sure, if I
I'm
can share
not
my
personally
screen
familiar
again.
with it.
Can you see my screen?
We can see the screen, and there we go. Thank you.
This is the, looking at the site from East Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And to the right, where there's the palm trees, that's the train tracks. To the northwest, this is the house of worship. And let me bring up the aerial.
There we go. Yeah, she's going to show the aerial. That's what we thought.
So again, you can see the train tracks to the east.
So can you describe the usages of the properties around like in that block across the street and adjacent? I see the RS 50.
Across the street is commercial. I'm not sure what the business name is. To the west is vacant commercial. Next to that is another commercial. And then to the, across the train tracks on the northeast, that's multifamily.
Councilwoman Hurtag?
Aren't there single-family residences across the street? I
There
didn't know.
are-
I didn't think that was commercial. I thought it's zoned commercial, but that area is pretty residential along MLK.
Let me go to an aerial and see if I can actually locate what that is.
That's a tiger.
You see my tiger? I'm sorry.
There's a tiger
I
across
like
the street.
tigers.
Now we just need some.
Good job.
Now we just need some lions and bears.
You can name the animal. Very proud of
me
you.
and our president.
Let's see. So this is like, it looks like a can you see my screen looking at the
Yes,
aerial?
yes.
I mean, looking at across the street?
It's a substation.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's a substation. And this is, I honestly can't tell you what this is, but it does not look like it is used. And then further down, we have, looks like a barber shop.
Okay, now I know where we're at. Okay, I wasn't able to place it, but now I know where we're at. Okay.
That's going the other direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this way, it looks like there's some truck parking and some residential, but that's across the street over by the railroad tracks.
Railroad tracks, got it.
So up here, this is the multifamily that I was referencing. And then over here, some more single family. So the single family is behind all of the commercial type uses. Yeah, this isn't very clear what it is, if it was used as commercial or residential, but right across the street is the substation.
So I'm across the street from the church on the other side of the railroad tracks. What is that?
Oop. This is,
I'm getting dizzy.
I'm so sorry. I'm not exactly sure what this is.
Okay, very good. Maybe we can ask the applicant to describe it too. Okay. Okay, very good. Council have any further questions? Okay, hearing none. Applicant, you have an opportunity for rebuttal. In your rebuttal, could you describe the adjacent properties for us to
Yes.
maybe fill in some of the gaps that we get in these pictures?
Yeah.
And start with your name.
So more north of the
You
subject
have to start
property.
with your name again, yeah.
Daniel and Derry.
Okay, there you go. And we'll start your time now, thank you.
More, the subject property is here by the pen in the red dashed line, and just more north of the subject property are single-family residential uses. And then as we saw along MLK, more towards the east and along the southern portion of MLK, there are single-family structures that either, as we saw in the example, are vacant or more residential uses along the eastern side of the property. And then similarly to the south of MLK, there's RM16, RM18 filled with single-family uses as well. Just a couple other, I guess, comments from that came up. For proximity to the railroad, there is a 50-foot right-of-way there that we would stay clear of and fence off if this were to move forward. And that is about it for rebuttal.
Go ahead.
Justin LaRosa, just to know that each man in our program has case manager and also has a therapist to see. So the case manager who is here actually stops by at least once a week, and so it is a monitored kind of situation. And depending on how you rule, if we're able to move forward, and I would welcome to work with Pastor Frank if there are any concerns associated with it. But as I said before, there have been no calls to the property for any problems.
And the typical duration for an occupant in part of the Portico Housing Solutions is at least 12 months.
Yeah. 12 months following the programmatic requirements, yes.
Does that conclude your rebuttal?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Councilwoman Hurtak, you had something? Stay there for a second, she may have a question.
No, I think I have a question for staff if she is available.
Yes, ma'am.
This is simply an SU1 for the property, and they're just simply asking for single-family zoning, correct? They're not asking for any sort of special
Classification.
extra classification because of,
Correct.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does council have any further questions? I saw a gentleman in the front row. Are you with the applicant?
No, but I know you did public comment. You didn't close public comment. I just wanted to be able to say one
No,
thing.
it's closed. Unless council wants to,
My recommendation.
to give rebuttal again.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly, certainly you have that right. He has that right, but as the gentleman is here, you haven't closed.
Yeah, have you been sworn in?
Was there a motion to close public comment?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Have you been sworn in?
from this morning, I guess, yes.
No, now, so stand, raise your right hand, and the clerk will swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Start with your name, and you have 3 minutes.
All right, Anthony Daniels. I just, I don't have a dog in this fight, but I was there. I witnessed the fire, so I saw how it all started. The guy who was living there, again, I feel compassionate about that guy because it was just an unfortunate situation. And if that's what Portugal provided that property as a transitional housing for people in his situation, his nature. Actually, I'm glad that he lived because I had to tell him to get out of there because he was trying to do the most. But he got out alive, so I'm glad that he didn't get harmed. But I do think that Portugal plans to try to reuse that property for the same type of agenda that they've been doing. I would support that completely. So if they consider that if that's what they're going to use it for transitional home, for placement of people in those type of circumstances, I would definitely support that. I hope you do too.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Pointer, would you like to speak?
Since you opened it back up. Stephanie Pointer. You know, every time I go to a neighborhood meeting, people complain about the homeless. Every single time. And I'm sure you guys hear it too. But the problem is, if we push back every time that somebody is trying to put in a facility or a way to get those folks off the street, then it kind of goes against the whole concept, you know. Can't have it both ways. They got to live somewhere. And, you know, I have provided housing to people who had mental issues and who had issues before. And it's a tough road to hoe. I can't do it now because my properties are 900 miles away and I cannot babysit them. But if I personally, in the past, when I lived a mile from there, I could deal with some of that. And that's why they have support services. Trust me, I live in a nice neighborhood, and I have a bunch of freaking crazy people who've lived there over the years, too. I swear, Domain Homes found every crazy person in South Tampa to sell a house to when we first bought our house. So,
Well,
you know,
they
it
found
seems
you to
like the
sell your
issue
house
is
to.
more with who the inhabitants are going to be. Yes, of course, I'm still there, and I'm the craziest of the crazies. But the bottom line is, it doesn't seem like that it's against the house is the issue. It's who's going to live in the house, and, you know, what do we truly want? And I don't know what the answer is, but this is just my observation. You want people off the street, but then you don't want them to live next to you. It's a hard road to hoe. I mean, we dealt with it at the Civic Center. We put the grocery box out at the curb, and so then we had the homeless camping out on the property, so that every time somebody put groceries out there, they would be getting first dibs on the groceries. So then we had all the neighbors pissed off at us because we were feeding people. So, you know, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, but you got to figure out where we start. You can't stop. We can't continue to ignore the problem because it doesn't sound like the single-family home is the problem. It sounds like the occupants are the issue.
Thank you, Ms. Pointer. You'd like to
Can I speak?
speak?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, come on up. Oh, you already spoke once?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you already spoke. I'm sorry, you only get one bite of the apple. And I saw this, you wanted to speak?
Yes, I did.
And you were sworn in? You were not? Okay, here we go again.
Yep.
Raise your right hand.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Start with your name, please.
My name is MJ Johnson. I'm part of Love Inc., and I know Shalette came up here and spoke earlier. The Portico housing, which offers transitional housing for the men, there are a few men that we actually know that reside there or they resided there, and they truly are just trying to get their life back on track. So I heard everything that the church stated, but the church, you're actually here to serve. So in actuality, we should all be working together, you know, been up here before, and it's just, how can we have unity in the community? And this is a way where these men are coming from a place of, they've already been judged. They don't need to be judged anymore, and the housing provides that. And even speaking for myself, I've currently stayed in a housing that's transitional, and you don't know the help and the service that it's providing. You're taking your life from being on the streets to actually people who actually care. And that's all the portico housing is attempting to do. So we can judge and come with our worries all day long, but it's truly about how can we serve the community, and this is the way that they're serving the community. And I think, honestly, I support it. It may have burned down once, but whatever happened before is not going to happen again. And I just believe that we should all come together as a community to support these men or women, for that matter, that are just going from one phase of their life to another phase. So truly, truly, we do need the transitional housing. I understand the environment, but we can all do this together, and that's what it's about.
Thank you very much. I was thinking the same thing. So I'm assuming, because all of those speakers were in favor, that the applicant doesn't have a rebuttal to the favorable discussion. Any further? Okay, so we have a motion to close from Councilwoman Hurtak. We have a second from Councilman Vieira. Anybody like to make a motion?
I just want to talk.
Yeah, okay, we can talk, or make the motion and talk, or talk and make the motion.
I'll let Councilman Maniscalco make a motion if he
So
wants to.
I'll recognize Councilwoman Hurtak for discussion.
I just wanted to say that I understand the passions on both sides, but unfortunately, no one actually spoke to the issue at hand, which was the SU1. Like, we cannot consider who's going to live there. We cannot consider what's being done. All we can consider is the property right? Or is the single family appropriate for this location? That's all we can consider. We cannot consider, because we don't know what will happen. This house could be sold. Should the house belong there? And so, I thought what Councilman, or rather Chair Clendenin asked about what's surrounding it, and that's the reason we're here, because there isn't residential surrounding it on both sides. But the one side, on the other side of the tracks, had the multifamily. So, I mean, I personally will support this because it is putting housing where we desperately need housing. But I just wanted folks to know that we technically cannot consider anything that was said about what the property is to be used for, because legally we can't do that. Legally, we're focused on the SU1. Is it the proper place to put single family? Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco, you gonna make the motion, or you want to talk?
I'll talk, and I'll make a motion.
Okay, Councilman Maniscalco.
So looking at this SU1, Councilmember Hurtak mentioned it. It doesn't matter. We can't consider what is going to go or what could go on the property. But in looking at this, it's interesting. This property goes right up against the railroad tracks. If you go west, you see where there's a lot more commercial. When you start going east, basically starting where the empty lots are and where this house used to be, even though it was zone CI, I think, on the other side of the street, but there's a lot of single-family homes. Martin Luther King in this section is interesting because it's a very busy traveled road, but there's a lot of single-family homes there. A lot that are historical, they've been there for 100 years, some are mid-century. But right here, what's interesting is when you start on Short 30th Street, it transitions into a lot more residential. Now, on the other side of the train tracks, there is that multifamily. So we have, residential multifamily on that side. And then when you go to the other side of the train tracks and the other side of the street, there's a lot of single-family homes. So I think it is appropriate. And I would be making a motion to overturn the denial and affirm the special use based on that. Now, if this were on the other side of 30th going west, where you see a lot more commercial structures, then it would be a different story. But in this case, you're going into that residential section.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilman Maniscalco.
No, I'll make the motion.
I thought you did. Okay. Well, so for discussion, I'll talk about it. This is one of those odd situations because it's a very unique parcel. And while we craft rules for the city of Tampa to cover as much as we possibly can, there's always going to be those one-offs, and that's the difficult position we put staff in. When these issues come up, we ask staff to interpret rules based on what is the 99.9%. But then every once in a while we get these oddballs that just doesn't. It's a square peg trying to put in a round hole, and it just doesn't. Where the economy is right now, where this road is, if not here, then where? That was the point that he's, and I understand about the usage and stuff, but this is just one of those things that this particular parcel doesn't seem to want to fit into what we look at as far as long-term land use and our goals. So I think this is a reasonable request, and I understand why staff denied it, because they have to conform with the black and white of the text. We have an opportunity to inject more common sense sometimes into this process if we look at the parcel and try to decide what the best use of that particular land is for the city of Tampa based on what people have come before us and said today. So I'm going to support this as well, because I think, and while it's not necessarily the use, I do applaud the use. It's definitely something that we need in the city of Tampa, of being able to house folks and have transitional type of housing. It's a crisis, not just in the city of Tampa, but our country, and we have to recognize that that's a need that we and this is, I applaud the people that want to provide for that need, because there's a lot of folks out there that suffer, and it's good. So this is again, it's one of those one-offs. It's difficult to conform to the black and white rules, but I'm going to support it. Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Chairman. When you look at this, it's under one item that we're looking here for, all of us are here for, and it reads, the proposed use must be located adjacent to residential use on at least 2 boundaries. And it's only 1 boundary in this case. However, the need for housing and the application, and I understand what the public was saying about different things about smoke and all that kind of stuff, and I would be outraged myself. However, that's what law enforcement is to do. What we have on us here is just an issue that conflicts with the zonings of the area. So I would also be supporting it, because one, I think, overrules the other one, because we don't have the perfect evidence on the other case. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hearing nothing else, Councilman Maniscalco, would you like to make the formal motion?
So I'd like to make a motion to overturn the zoning administrator's denial. I move to affirm, which would be approve, the special use application for the SU 125-77 for the property located at 2924 East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, because the petitioner provided competent substantial evidence to waive the requirement that the proposed use must be located adjacent to the residential uses on at least 2 boundaries of the zoning lot as required in the City of Tampa Code Section 27-132 for the following reasons. 1, it is a unique parcel, not just because it's a triangular shape, but it abuts train tracks, which that is not the norm. Because once you look at the east side of Short 30th Street, it goes from what is more commercial to going into residential, and we see that with the single-family homes. Also because there's that multifamily parcel on the other side of the train tracks, on the same side, the north side of Dr. Martin Luther King. And again, it's an interesting situation. I would say it's unique. And because of that, I make this motion.
I think I heard a second from Councilwoman Hurtak.
With
yes.
an amendment, and my only addition would be that it's replacing a single-family home that was there existing.
Exactly. So historically, because I think it was mentioned that there was a home built almost a century ago, another single-family home is moving into that. So we're not modifying and changing and doing something different. We're going by the standard of a structure that was built that predates our zoning and codes, being that it's it originally was so old, 100 years ago. That's
Thank you.
it.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is this loaded in, or do we need a roll call? Okay. Okay, motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Vieira.
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Miranda.
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Hurtak.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
And Clendenin.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our 1:30 public hearing, and we are on track back to staff report 42. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you. Hey, young man.
Good wave.
Hey, young man. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about renaming.
All right. Mallory Lagasse, Real Estate Department. I'm here for a presentation on a motion for an honorary street naming in honor of Tony Garcia Jr. And if they can pull up the presentation.
It's up.
Tony Garcia Jr. was a respected leader whose life reflected extraordinary service to his country and his community. Born in Tampa in 1922, Mr. Garcia proudly served in the United States military during World War II and the Korean War. After returning home, he continued his commitment to service by dedicating 35 years as executive director of the Tampa USO. During his time at the USO, Mr. Garcia worked hard to ensure that military personnel passing through Tampa felt welcomed, valued, and at home. He became known as the Bob Hope of Tampa, forming friendships with countless service members and welcoming nationally known entertainers such as Bob Hope, Shirley Temple, and Jimmy Stewart to entertain the troops. His work made Tampa a warm and memorable stop for veterans, and he became one of the strongest advocates for those who served. Beyond his work with the USO, Mr. Garcia was a champion for West Tampa. He served as a board member and executive director of the West Tampa Chamber of Commerce and was instrumental in its revival. He was a proud promoter of the area's culture and history, helping revive the Centro Espanol building and serving as executive director of the Latin American Fiesta. His civic leadership also included service on the board of the Tampa Urban League, leadership with the Hillsborough Education Foundation, and chair for the Public Relations Committee for the Tampa United Fund. Known for his warmth, professionalism, and unmistakable style, Tony Garcia embodied the spirit of public service. Upon his passing in 2003 at the age of 81, his legacy was recognized on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, where Congressman Jim Davis paid tribute to his military service, his advocacy for veterans, and his profound impact on West Tampa and the city of Tampa as a whole. Per our due diligence, the Mobility Department recommends installing an honorary street naming sign at the northwest corner of North Howard Avenue and West Cherry Street. This location is adjacent to a pedestrian crosswalk and is also next to the Centro Espanol building, so it would be highly visible for many community pedestrians. If council chooses to move forward with this honorary street naming, we request a first reading for March 26th or after, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions first? Councilman Vera?
And thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of things. I wanted to go through a couple of things. I wanted to, if I may, Mr. Chair, invite Tony Garcia to come up. Tony, did you want to say anything?
He wants to sing.
Oh, yeah, no, we know about,
good.
did you want to say anything, or?
I think you should come up and sing.
What, you sang last time, what was it, summer of '69, right? Bryan Adams.
He sings very good, like
Oh,
Chicago
no,
songs.
he's good. No.
All right, enough about me. Thank you. Tony Garcia, it's a pleasure seeing you all once again in this venue, even though it's something that is a little foreign to me now in my retirement, but I'm so honored to be here before this body, recognizing the accomplishments of my father. Only a few of you on the board really knew my dad. I think, Charlie, maybe you're the only one. I don't think anybody else really.
I count for two.
You count for two. Guido, you never
never met him.
You never got to meet him. So
Charlie knew George Washington.
Charlie enjoyed several adventures, I think, because Charlie was at one time, you had a restaurant on Kennedy Boulevard, and I believe through a couple of my dad's events, he had some celebrities over there that you got to meet in addition to the ones that were mentioned in the presentation. I have no Sinatra pictures to show you, but I do believe that I shared with you all some pictures of my dad's exploits with some of the celebrities that he had brought. Most of the ones that he had brought were ones that made significant contributions on their own to the service community. My dad was in the Air Force Reserves and was nominated by his staff sergeant to be considered for the position of a director of the USO, which he assumed in 1957. And proudly served that for 35 years, established a USO lounge where the old Hillsborough Hotel used to be, right on the corner of Madison and Florida. There used to be a Frisch's Big Boy across the street, as you remember, Charlie. And Dad had USO Lounge there for 25 years, where servicemen from MacDill, or when we had a port that actually had ships come in from the Navy, servicemen would come on their leaves, and they could go to the lounge, and Dad would give them tickets that he procured from various places for them to eat at restaurants, for them to go to different movies. And also had a pool table up in his lounge for them to go ahead and just play, and typewriters so they could write to their families, and a phone so he could call their families. And he also, on top of that, for about 25 years, had an annual Christmas show at MacDill Air Force Base. And at that show, he would send 2 families home for Christmas, which was very, very nice as well. And he also, as a surprise, would bring a family into Tampa for the service person that did not know that their family was going to be there, and he disguised them as elves or something on the stage while all the other performers performed. And at the end, you know, he would surprise them, and they would take their stuff off, and there would be a good reunion there on stage with this person and their family. And I found, after my dad passed and went through all his stuff, he still had the letters from people that wrote to him thanking him so much for bringing them down to see their family. And I found out a lot more about my dad after he passed away from people that I had never known before that told me stories about, was Tony Garcia your dad with the USO? Yeah. And they would tell me about, they were new in town. A lady came with her daughter, and there's a grown woman now, and she said, when I came into town, I was a single mom, and I had my little daughter here, and they told us to go see your dad. And your dad helped me get on my feet and find a job, and I never forgot that. I met her because I was at our agency had a public hearing, and she was there to speak on some topic, and she actually waited till the whole thing was over just to ask me that question. So that's just one example, but there were countless other incidents that I had, meetings with other people that told me about stuff that I never knew that my dad had done. But I knew that he was a friend to all, and he never turned down trying to help people. He was just a special guy. And I miss him.
May I show, if I may, you sent me some pictures, may I go on the wolf or whatever they call it? If I may, there's some really neat ones
Wolf.
here.
Wolf.
Is that what it's called?
Wolf.
Yes,
Wolf.
it's a wolf.
Okay, wolf.
And you have to howl.
Yeah.
Yeah, before you use it, you have to howl.
So-
I want to hear a howl.
Couple of neat ones. And, ever since we met like 9.5 years ago, and, Tony, he's always talked about his dad. And I got to I never met like Charlie did. Never got to know, obviously, his dad, but, he was an amazing guy, But a couple of neat pictures here. Is this seen up there? Yep. This is Tony Garcia there with Senator Claude Pepper, congressman later too. He was a big New Deal Democratic senator in Florida. A lot of exploits.
And my mom, great defender of Social
Oh, and that's your
Security.
mother.
And my mom.
Excuse me, Mrs. Garcia. Excuse me. This is my favorite one. This is Tony Garcia there with his son looking at Jimmy Stewart, who not just was one of the greatest actors that ever lived, but he was a brigadier general and a Gold Star father too. His stepson would die in Vietnam, but he was a World War II hero. A really neat one. This is your mother, your father, and Congressman Sam Gibbons. 34 years United States Congressman, D-Day veteran, decorated World War II veteran, great American hero. Here's your father. Show me this with your grandparents, with his parents. This is during World War II, correct? Okay.
That's 1942.
Okay, wow, so look at that. Lou Piniella, here, look at this one. This one's neat. A lot of, just showing what a man about town he was. More with Jimmy Stewart. Y'all know me, I love Jimmy Stewart. This is a great one with somebody we know. Many people, late Judge Alvarez and Charlie Miranda. Look at that.
Gosh, look at that.
That's
Jack,
awesome.
Jack Espinosa.
Our main man, what a pleasure it is to
That was
serve
a hell
with
of a
Charlie.
night.
Oh, what a night. Here, E.J. Salcinas, Governor Martinez, many others, Tony Garcia, Vicky Carter, excuse me, yes, sir. Then, this is a great one, last but not least, Mickey Mantle, which is, that's kind of cool. So, yeah, just some pictures and everything. So it's it's our honor to do this, Tony, and you're such a great guy. You're always a good person, so just know.
Thank you.
Love you, buddy.
Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco, then Miranda.
So I never met your father, but I always heard about your dad. And I think, and I would see your dad at events when I was a kid, but I was too scared to approach him. I remember when I met Mayor Greco 30 years ago, and Fernando Noriega and all them. I have a picture from that night with Mary Alvarez, former city council member, and it was the mayor, you know, and your dad was one of those people. So my friend Dominic, who's been around for a while, he told me stories about your dad. And he said, growing up in Tampa in the 80s and the 90s, whenever, if you wanted anything done in his circle, he said, you go see three people, Marcelo Maceda,
Right.
Victor DeMaio Sr., and Tony Garcia. And that's it. I mean, it's the movers and shakers of the time. And I've sat with you many, many times, and you've told me stories. The coolest story you told me, of one of many, was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Super Bowl 84 or Super Bowl 1991, Bob Hope calls your dad up or showed up to the house in a Rolls Royce or something and said, hey, you want to go to the Super Bowl? Picks up your dad, takes him to Tampa Stadium, and this is Bob Hope. They go up to the security gate, and the security is going, you know, do you have a ticket? Do you have a pass? The window rolls down. Oh, Mr. Hope, come on. The gates go up, and they just walk into it. You know, I mean, and Bob Hope, we talk about Jimmy Stewart being one of the greatest Americans and greatest American actors. Bob Hope was Bob Hope. I mean, I know he passed away right around when your dad died, like 2003, 2004. I know Bob Hope lived to be like 100, but Senor Wences, and I know Martin Shelby will appreciate this, the friendship that he had there, and you showed me stuff, and he was a regular on the Ed Sullivan Show. So it's that World War II generation, that, you know, the greatest generation that we're never going to have again. It's that era of, like, my grandparents, you know, Tony Garcia. His photo's on the wall at the West Tampa Sandwich Shop. That's a big deal, you know. But growing up, he was one of the names you always heard. And I remember opening La Gaceta when he passed away. I was in college, and it was this whole write-up, just like Victor Sr. It was, and then Marcelo Maceda. I mean, the giants of the time that made Tampa Tampa. And this is a very small token of appreciation for everything that he did. I mean, I learned more today what he did with the soldiers in the USO and whatnot. But I'm very excited to support this, so more people can see your dad's name and ask and learn about him, because he was, you know, a great man. So I'm good with this.
I want to age us. Councilwoman Young, do you know who Bob Hope is?
It's okay.
Yeah, he's the son of Mr. and Mrs. Hope. I'm giving you an out.
Because you said it, President, you should have said, do you know who Bob Hope was?
Well, yeah. Do you know who Ed Sullivan is? Councilman,
Look, have you heard of the Beatles?
That is self.
Have you heard of the Beatles?
That is self-depreciating humor, by the way. So,
Look, the reason for all this,
remember
you know,
that.
it's very simple, really, in my mind anyway. We were what we were because that's all we had. There was no cell phones, there was no TV to speak of, there was no mass communication, and everybody talked to each other.
Right.
So now you're losing the art of talking to each other eye to eye. All you see is now is the phone, dial up, you dial, and you talk to somebody you don't even know. I get at least 15 calls a day, I bet you all of us do, from somebody we don't know that's trying to sell us something for one reason or other. Bring your car in for service or whatever it is. I want to buy your land, and what are you doing, bought? I got toothpaste I can sell you, and all that kind of stuff. But it is what it is. Right now, in the society we live in, we're creating our own problems where we don't know who we're talking to. And in those days, you had to be who you had to be because you had to make yourself known by talking to everybody. And your father did that with 110%. So did Marcelo Maceda, so did E.J. Salcinas, so did Virgil Fabian, so did Tony Frisco, so did all of them, every one of them, 100 of them I can name you now. And we did it by communication, not by phone, by going knocking on doors and talking to each other. When they called a meeting, everybody showed up. Why? They had no place else to go. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. And that was, you call this a great society? That society make this society look sick. You know why? Because they knew how to communicate. All we know how to do is talk to people now that you don't even know by phone or by text or whatever. There was no email. There was no computerized system. There was nothing now. You could buy $100 worth of thing and 10 million people know you in 5 minutes. None of that was existing. And now you got AI. People are going to speak to each other less and less. And that's one of the problems we have. We forgot to speak to one another. I guarantee you that 50% of the people in Tampa, in some area, don't even know the names of the neighbors to the left or to the right. And you get 100% of them, all they come in and go right in the door. Before, there was no air conditioning, there was nothing, you had to stay outside. So you get to meet people, you know what they drove, you know the kids, you know everybody. So what happens, society said change. You talk about mental problems, we're creating our own problems. Environmentally, not speaking to each other, everything is coming to a head, and that's what's coming in America. Not in America, the whole world. So we're so far advanced, we don't know who we are. Thank you very much. But your father was the leader of what I'm saying, of knowing how to communicate and walk with people.
Well, actually, let me get
They
to
all
Carlson,
walk.
because he hasn't spoken yet. Councilman Carlson, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, thank you for keeping your dad's stories alive. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be on council one day when we name something after you, but thank you for everything you've done. It makes me think, all these stories, you know, it's not just nostalgia. In the 80s, Tampa in some ways was at its peak. We had more international flights than we did at least by 2010, because we lost a bunch of them. We had one of the best airports in the world. We had more international banks than we do now. And Tampa was smaller inside. We didn't have as many buildings, but the leaders in Tampa were important on a national and international scale. And there was a different style of leadership back then, different expectations for where Tampa would go. And the fact that your dad was known by some of the greatest stars. I mean, Tampa is always trying to be a big city, but we really were in the 80s. The 80s, we were really well known all over the world. And, you know, your dad was one of those folks. I wish, we'll have to have coffee and talk about this sometime, but I wish that you and some of the other kids of that generation would get together and write a book like Charlie was kind of referring to as what was the leadership style back then? What was, they weren't limited by people saying we're not a great city or we're not this or not that. They just did it. They, you know, the fact that he knew Bob Hope and all these other people, he just went out and met people. And a lot of the leaders at that time did. They had huge expectations for Tampa, bigger than we have now. And I wish there was some way that we could capture that, and because it's the essence of Tampa's culture. And when the physical environment is changing around us, we need to make sure we don't lose touch of that culture. Another example, not from the Latin community, but Jerry Divers passed away the last couple of years. I mean, Jerry was the founder, CEO of one of the most important banks in Tampa ever. He would handwrite personal letters to people after he met them, and he had this style of leadership and management that we need to understand. And I think that some of this culture still exists in back rooms, and there are still folks, you know, anywhere EJ goes, for example, if there's a lunch or a dinner and you're with 10 people and you're sharing stories, but somehow we have to capture those stories and make sure we teach the next generation. There's so many new people in Tampa. My kids were born here, but they haven't really been exposed to that culture. How do we pass on to the next generations how great Tampa was and the leadership style that made it great before, and how can that lead us into the future?
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilman Maniscalco.
No, a couple things I forgot. Well, first, you know, I hung out a lot with my grandmother, that World War II generation, and that was your dad's generation. And a lot that I learned, and the person that I am today, is because of that generation. But as you notice, I'm wearing this beautiful flag pin. This is the beautiful City of Tampa flag. And I wear different pins and different cufflinks. I'm not wearing cufflinks today, but I have a pair of City of Tampa seal cufflinks that I got from you. Were they yours or were they your dad's?
My dad's.
So when I wear them, I'm not wearing them today, which I should have, a little piece of your dad is here. Because people love those cufflinks, especially Mike Suarez, you know, who's always admired them. He's like, where do you get those? Where do you get those? And I think I have a tie bar and other City of Tampa seal items, but they're even more special, not because I love the city, but because they belong to your dad, and your dad dedicated his whole life to, I mean, the story of your father is helping other people.
Well, a point, if I may interject, and I appreciate all your comments. My father was born in West Tampa, on Armenia. He was a child of West Tampa. He was a child of the Depression, and his family was very poor. My grandmother was from Key West, and my grandfather had migrated from Cuba, and met her there, and subsequently they moved up here because he was a tabaquero. He was a tobacco maker, so this is where the living was. So it's kind of ironic when they asked me about the locations of where they were going to want to put this street naming. The Centro, my dad told me a story about when he was a little boy that he would go, you could go for like a nickel and spend the day, you know, watching movies and getting some popcorn and stuff at the Centro, because it was a theater in its time.
The Royal Theater.
And he told me a story about there was a man, he was standing outside, and, you know, he didn't have any money to go in there, he was poor. They would eat hard Cuban bread and cold Cuban coffee at times. He would tell me that story, and then, but this man, you know, well-to-do man he said, he saw my dad, and he's like, he gave my dad a quarter and said, go in and have a great time. So he took the quarter, and he waited until the man left, and then he ran home, which was about 8 blocks to the south of there, and because he wanted to give the quarter to his family, because he knew that they needed it more than he needed to go spend it at the theater that day. So that's what it was like back in the day, and he never forgot that. He never forgot the poverty aspect of it. And for him and his brothers and sister to rise out of that, to become the man that he did, is really the true American story. And I never cease to hear things that happen. You mentioned Marcelo Maceda. He and my dad were good friends from the get-go, from when they were very young. They played baseball together in Cascaden Park. And they were both very good baseball players. And they rose to the ranks. They were in the executive fiesta together, the Latin fiesta. They were together on the board there, and of course the De Mayos. And I do, Bill, I do keep track of the children of those two people that I mentioned, Marlene, who's Marlene Maceda, and also Vic De Mayo Jr., who I went to high school with. So I still keep in touch with those people because we're just extensions of our fathers. So, oh, one more thing. Shirley was actually there the day they dedicated the Centro Español. So she remembers Dad, because Dad was on the Urban League, and that was when you were there. So that predates even coming over here. So she knew Dad too.
Very good. Well, thank you, Tony, for coming out.
Thank you.
Do you need anything from us today? I know this was just a presentation.
No, it's just, if you choose to move forward with it, we will be posting comment, but I was gonna give those dates after you guys do your.
We don't need a motion today.
Okay.
Oh, okay, well, then it will be,
Do we need a motion for you today?
I would think so.
Continue to move forward?
Yeah.
yeah, I thought so.
Okay.
March, what was it?
March 26th or after.
Yeah, if may I?
Councilman
Mr.
Beer,
Chair?
go ahead.
I motion for this item to come back to us on March 26th for
Second.
Tony Garcia Jr.
We have a motion from Councilman Bureau. We have a second from Councilman Rand. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Yep, so it will be posted for public comment starting tomorrow, January 23rd through Monday, February 9th.
Where can people go?
It's on the City of Tampa's real estate page. You can find a link for honorary naming.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And,
Thank you for the memories.
yeah, thank you, Tony. That was a really informative, I wish I would have known your father. Okay, well, that concludes our regularly scheduled program, that we've completed our agenda. Well, we have new business. Yep. So, new business. We'll start from left to right. Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this short, but in the last city council meeting 2 weeks ago, regular city council meeting 2 weeks ago, we talked about the South Howard project, and we asked staff a bunch of questions about it, and they gave very direct answers. About 4 or 5 days later, and the essence for me was that we heard from them, Palmacia Pines is not going to be really addressed until 2032 or 2033. A few days later, the consultant that's working on the project met with a small group in Parkland Estates and presented something completely different than what we had been presented. And then a couple days ago, a small group of the mayor's staff I heard even the mayor, I don't know for sure, met with a small group in Palmacia Pines. And then the people who weren't invited, which is the majority of both neighborhoods, the majority of the people who were not invited, which is most of the people in both neighborhoods, started asking questions. Josh Cascio posted on Nextdoor that there would be a public hearing on the project to fully vet it on January 29th at 9 a.m. That item is not on the agenda for January 29th. What is on the agenda is a discussion about the CIP update, and they usually present the Great Eight. I think that having a big discussion about that project on that day with a full agenda is not going to be fair to the people involved. It also, because it's not a separate agenda item, it's not fair to the public, the broader public that would. By the way, since the mayor and those folks have met with those two neighborhoods, we've been flooded with emails. And there's also a video. I don't know how much it costs. I heard it cost $10,000 or $20,000. So there's a campaign going to try to sell us on this project. What we need to do is step back and have a robust, honest conversation with the public. The fact that the information that was presented to us is now completely different than what's being presented to a small group in the neighborhoods is disturbing to me. What I'd like to do is have a larger workshop to talk about it. It looks like the soonest that we have room on a workshop is the March workshop. And what I would recommend is we put this as a standalone item on the March workshop, let the staff present and the consultants present whatever they want, and then have the public weigh in on it. But that way, we're not going to be rushed, we're not going to have a full agenda, and it will be advertised as a separate discussion. So my motion would be to remove the South Howard project from the Grade 8 discussion on January 29th, and instead have a full presentation agenda item in the March workshop on the South Howard project.
Second.
Mr. Shelby.
We checked the date for that. I don't know if. when
It's
is
not the 29th, it's the 26th.
That's a regular session of city council.
No, that's a workshop.
We just put this.
So I was going to speak to that, Mr.
Yeah.
Shelby, if you'd let me.
Yeah, hold on one second. Okay,
So
Councilwoman Hurtak, you recognize.
we've been, February 26th, sorry, I was looking at February. January 29th, so we already only have 5 items, and I don't know about you, maybe you haven't gotten the briefing, but I got a briefing that said that is what they're planning to do, is instead of the Great 8, they're going to focus on this one item, and that they're changing the title in the description, so yeah, that's, apparently our chair has a motion to do that, just that, and we actually have room on this agenda to talk about it. I don't want to continue this because ultimately, we just can't keep kicking it down the road. I know we need to have a conversation about it. I think next week on January 29th is time to have that conversation.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, I'm not willing to go forward to February or March because we've got to get this. We just need to hear it. We need to talk about it. We need to.
So, hold on. We're going to go rounds and you'll go next, okay?
Yeah, I don't support moving.
I'm only saying that water does not flow north. Yeah. It only flows south. And when you look at it, if it's this here, and then you have the pines here, and this neighborhood here, and this water floods first because it comes down, this would take care of that water and this water because it flows south. I mean, I can't even guarantee that this is going to be 100% fixable because I don't know what's coming in 5 years or 10 years or 2 days from now. If a hurricane comes here and sits out there in the Gulf for 4 days, nothing works. Nothing works. Let's fix that. It will not work if we have a hurricane sitting here and did what it did to New Orleans and other cities around the country. I'm not here to say that one way or the other. I don't know what the administration did, nor do I care what they've done. I only care what I've seen with my eyes and what I've talked to the neighborhoods about getting things done. And I'm like Councilmember Hurtak. It's got to end sometime before hurricane season starts, so we can start doing something to alleviate, not only here, other projects are going to come the same way. And anywhere you go with a project, you're going to have problems because it's going to be on one side or the other side for whatever reason. It'll solve something, it won't solve something else somewhere else. So something else somewhere else says, what about me? And it is what it is. And And I'm trying to solve a problem as soon as possible so I can avoid the problem later on in life. Whether I'm here or not doesn't matter, but I gotta solve, not that I'm going anywhere. Let me fix that.
Well, you're eventually gonna go somewhere.
Well,
I hope you have an air conditioner.
I do have an air conditioner. But listen, hey, I can take heat, he doesn't know. But
He
anyway,
dishes
what
it
I'm
out,
saying
too.
is, it's gotta end sometime. I don't know what the administrator, I don't know who they talk to, I don't know anything. All I know is what we voted on. And that said, you can change your vote if you like, it doesn't bother me one way or the other, but it is what it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir. So, you know, when it comes to moving it out of the grade 8 or whatever issue that is, you know, that's one thing. But if Councilman Carlson, if you want to do like have it under the workshop, I'm glad to support that, to have further discussion. You're obviously very passionate about it. I think, you know, you ought to be given space for that and time and all that. I don't see a challenge with that. My only suggestion would be in a workshop is that we limit time on it, because I don't want to be here for not, you know, obviously giving great deference to the issue and so forth for an unlimited amount of time. But if it was to be just a flat workshop, I'm all for that. I got no problems with that. We should talk about this as much, not to slow it down, right? But to talk about it, further consideration. I don't see any problems with that. But it shouldn't be at the expense of the presently set agenda item. I think that's a good compromise, in my opinion.
Okay, so I'll speak and then I'll let you go. There's two things that are happening. I got that briefing as well. And if this motion fails, we're gonna make a motion to rename that workshop agenda that is on the January 29th from the biannual capital improvement project report presentation to the South Howard Flood project presentation and biannual capital improvement. And that provides more clarity for people so they understand, because right now it's really not clear that it's South Howard. So that is one. And then the other is because that evening session, we're going to be talking about that during the workshop. That evening session is relatively open. There's not a lot of things on it. We got 3 AB cases and a couple of comp plan amendments that, and one of them may be continued, is move the reapportionment of the capital to that evening. So it'll basically be a day of South Howard. We'll have the workshop during the day on the 29th, and then have the action item and the evening session. So if this motion fails, that would be the plan of action. So Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, first of all, staff has not notified me at all. They've not tried to set up a meeting with me. I presume it's because they know I don't know that I don't approve this project as is. And this is the problem with it. The city has to have an honest dialogue with the public, not cherry pick who, you know, if you meet with 20 people, 10 in each neighborhood, it's obviously a political ploy. It's not public information. You need to robustly meet with the neighborhoods and be honest with them. And the fact that just 4 days before, the staff answered questions that are completely opposite from what they're presenting now privately. I clearly asked the question, when is the first time that Parkland Estates will be protected? And it's 2030. I don't think that number's changed. But then staff confirmed Palmacia Pines is in phase 2, which won't be completed until 2033. And since that meeting, they changed the map suddenly, and they created a video of it. And the problem is that it's not an honest way to deal with the public. And the problem is that as staff is telling people that it's going to be on the 29th, people go to the calendar and look, and it says it's not on there. So now a week out, I did not know until Councilmember Hurtak said that the staff was planning on changing the name, but the public doesn't know either. And so the better thing would be for the city to ideally have an honest dialogue with the public. Go meet with Parkland Estates, not just 10 people, but the whole neighborhood. Go meet with Palmacia Pines, and then let's have a robust discussion about it. This is not something that we need to sell the public. It's something we need to have a dialogue with them about. And I can tell you, with the point that I made the last time is that Charlie mentioned that water flows south. The problem that in Parkland Estates is that Palmacia Pines is a bowl, and you don't need to put a pipe underneath one retention pond that's above grade. You need to put it where it's flooding in Palmacia Pines. So what happens in Palmacia Pines is it's overflowing. And the challenge, which I talked about with the staff, is that the consultant has not been given the authority to create a robust solution in Palmacia Pines. If you create a solution in Palmacia Pines, that will protect Parkland Estates. But there are all these conspiracy theories that are being pushed. I don't know if the administration is pushing it or what, but we get all this stuff about you like steak, you like Burns better. What my thing is that this is my district. I want the people in this neighborhood to be protected. And if we end up going forward, one of the things that I think we ought to do, because there's been so much misinformation given to these folks, I think we ought to, on Knights Avenue, there were 5 houses that in 1998, the city told them they couldn't build because it was in a retention pond. And the developer wanted it anyway, so the city made them sign a waiver saying, we understand and we'll let all the people in the future know that we're building in a low level area. I think if we move forward with this project without designing it to optimally prevent flooding, I think what we need to do is get everybody in this neighborhood to sign affidavits saying they understand they're not going to be protected till at least 2030, because by the time this project's done, it'll be a new mayor and a new city council. I won't be here on city council, but you guys are going to get the complaints about it, saying, it's this city council's fault that you didn't prevent our flooding. But we know right now it's not going to protect them until 2030. So why wouldn't we try to come up with other solutions? Unfortunately, this whole thing has been politicized. It's neighbors versus the businesses, which is not what it should be. It's about how do we find a solution.
Focus back down to whether.
So my point is that.
The motion was to move the.
My point is, until just now, I didn't know that they were going to change the name. The public doesn't know that. It's not enough notice for the public. I don't care if we do it in February or March, but the public needs sufficient notice, and we need to be honest and have an open dialogue with the public. It should not be a sales job by the
Two
ministry.
separate issues. Okay, you want to, let me just, one thing, there's 2 issues here. You've got the one issue of the 29th, the workshop is public notice, it has notice.
No, but it's the grade, right, as of right now, it's the grade 8. And what you suggested is keeping the grade 8, but also calling it South Howard. Right. Well, having all of those discussions on the same day is going to take a long time. I'm talking about moving it to a day where we have less.
Okay. That's focusing on Councilwoman Hurtak.
Thank you. So again, from my understanding from the communication I've had is the rest of the grade 8 will be a written report. And if we have questions, we're allowed to reach out and ask about them. So that's what we're doing. They are just reporting to us. This is just going to be something for us. The public can ask questions, but I will agree with you that we need to have robust public communication. So after they report to us, then they meet with the public, because then we have a little bit of history and understanding, and we're able to ask questions in the public. The public can watch. And so I think a good compromise would be to have this next week, make sure it's going to be televised, but make sure that it gets edited down just to this part. It gets sent out to the people in those areas in preparation for another meeting. So hopefully what we can do by next week is see if we can get a date set that we can actually go out to the public to different places, maybe at least 2 different meetings, so that we can do this. And the thing is, if we don't do something, then it's going to be 2031 before these neighborhoods are helped. And last year it would have been 2029, and I'm just not going to, I personally can't let it go any further. I cannot continue to listen to people's heartbreak and to have them continue to discuss their trauma over and over again. I don't think that's fair to people. We need to make, I think we're ready to listen to what's coming forward. We have to make the hard decisions. I'm not willing to kick it down the road any longer.
The next big decision point we have is September, and so we're not delaying it at all by putting this in March.
No, but what we're doing is we're getting, I mean, this is part of the Great 8. So we're getting a description about this. We're getting an update. We're talking about moving money that we have, that we didn't have to use. And that's just sitting there that we need to move, and this is a great project to move it to. If we don't use it for this project, if this project somehow gets canceled, we can move the money again. I'm just saying next week we can talk about it and then do public meetings. I want to hear about this project. I want to hear it. I'm interested in hearing it. I don't want to wait any longer.
Second to that hearing.
Can we?
Well, he's got a motion on the floor with the second.
Can I say one last thing?
Go ahead.
The day after the storm, I was the first person from the city to drive into Palmacia Pines. The neighbors called me, I went in there. And most of the people that you've seen here, I went in their houses, I walked with them. Two of them got in my car, I drove around the neighborhood, and they showed me the lack of maintenance in the neighborhood. Since then, we've looked at the documents going back to the 1980s that showed that the city never should have allowed those houses to be built in those locations, because it's not that it's flood zone X and the city messed up. It's that they're at the bottom of a bowl and the city should have put a retention pond there. So 2 weeks ago, the city said, we're not doing anything in Palmacia Pines until after 2030. What they're telling people now is we're going to put a pipe up inside one of the retention ponds. That retention pond is above the grade. And the problem is that the information is changing.
Let's stay focused on that issue.
The problem is the information is changing all the time, and there's politics. The administration is making this a political thing. There's a guy in Parkland Estates who's making it political, and it shouldn't be political. It should be based on science.
So what I would argue is that they heard you, and so they decided to add a pipe to help. Like I don't think it's.
I don't think that's what they're telling people. I think they're saying we were.
But that's what we're seeing anyway. So I apologize.
Councilman Vera.
Yes, sir. Just very briefly for it, that again, Councilman Carlson, if you were to, in addition to that, want to have an additional discussion in March, I'd be glad to second that. Just for a bit, but I don't want to have that in replacement of this, because again, you feel passionate about it, you want to talk about it, so long as there's a moderate time limitation, I'm fine with that. So in other words, by voting against this, there's another pathway which I think gives you a lot of what you want for this, in my opinion. But I'll just throw that out there as a bridge.
Okay.
To take it out of the grade 8, because until just now, I had no idea that they were going to try to change the name of it. The public doesn't have an idea. So we were going to move it to the March workshop because there seemed to be space. Okay.
We don't have a March workshop because of spring
So
break.
we can move it to February. There are 2 or 3 things on February that I'm willing to move if we can move it to the February workshop.
There's a February 26th.
Okay, so there's a motion by Councilmember Carlson, a second by Councilmember Maniscalco. I recognize Chair Clendenin.
In an effort to fit what you're trying to do, Councilman Carlson, would you accept a friendly amendment to keep this on the January 29th workshop in light of what Councilwoman Hurtek said, that only the grade 8 issues will be submitted via written report, and we'll only discuss the South Howard flood project, so it has that dedicated time on the 29th.
First of all, the grade 8 was an invention by the city staff. There
I
are more
understand.
CIP projects that we need transparency for the public, and we're shortchanging the other 7 by not discussing them on that day, plus all the ones that aren't in the grade 8. So we need to have public insight into these projects. I think it's too short a notice. What difference does a month make?
But that meeting's already noticed.
The staff, it's not noticed for
Everybody, if I watch Nextdoor, I watch Facebook, everybody knows we're talking about South Howard.
That's how I learned about it.
Only because the communication person went in there. It's not a broad notice to the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I'm not going to support your amendment. Okay, but so we have a motion and we have a second. Let's do a roll call. Can you restate the motion, please?
To remove the South Howard project from the grade 8 issues that is supposed to be heard on January 29th and schedule it for the February workshop.
Can we wait till we have a full council? I guess you'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, let's pause for a second. Oh, dun, 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 dun,
Don't sing, you're hurting my ears.
Oh, we can say, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Councilman Vieira, tomorrow. Happy birthday to you.
28. Grade 48. Grade 48. Year 48.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, we paused for you.
I know, I just couldn't wait.
So we have the motion and the second. It stands Councilman Carlson's unamended motion. We have a second from Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call, please.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Hurtak?
No.
Young?
I'm sorry.
I'm a little bit lost.
To move the workshop, it would be a yes vote. To continue it on the 29th would be a no vote.
To February. No,
February workshop.
instead of March.
Yes. If you want to keep it the way it is, vote no. If you want to change it, vote yes.
But I want to talk about this on the 29th. So that would be
29th.
yes.
No, that would be a no, if you want to
No.
talk about it 29th.
Okay, no.
Okay, thank you.
Vieira,
No, with the alternative path proposed.
Carlson,
Yes.
Miranda,
I'm for leaving it the way it is.
That's a no.
No.
and Clendenin.
No.
Motion failed with Hurtak, Young, Vieira, Miranda, and Clendenin voting no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Councilman Carlson, any other new business?
No, but next week, when it comes up, I'm gonna suggest that the staff create a waiver for the neighbors who flooded, the 20 or 30 people that flooded. It wasn't 200 or 300, despite what some people are saying. The ones that flooded because of this problem, they need to be given a waiver to say that they are in favor of this and that they clearly understand that it's not going to protect them until 2030 or thereafter, because what I won't be here, but you guys are gonna get complaints, because we know it's only at maximum it's only going to help in 4 inches of rain, and Milton was 11.5. Those houses are going to flood for the next 4 years. We've already been told that.
Thank you. Councilman Vieira.
Wait,
new
I'm sorry,
business.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Carlson, do you have anything additional under new business?
I already asked him that.
Form 8B, perhaps?
Oh.
Oh.
You could have just come out and asked him that.
So I earlier recused myself on an item, and I don't know what item it was, but although the company by whom I retain is not working on this matter, a client of the company may benefit, and so I'm abstaining to avoid a potential
Second
conflict.
or motion.
So
27 and 28.
Motion to receive and file.
Tico was in it, yeah. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second from Councilman Vieira. All those in favor say aye, accept
Aye.
the form.
14 and 15.
Okay, and opposed? Ayes have it, thank you. Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir. A couple of motions, if I may. Number one, I was having a conversation with some folks, and I want to get an update, a staff in-person update. I may change it to written if I find out something otherwise. But many years ago, the city of Tampa started the Autism Sensory Friendly program that included training for Tampa Police Department and Tampa Fire Rescue. And I would like to have an update on what kind of training has been going on in TPD and TFR for our first responders on April 2nd, if I may.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes
Thank
have
you.
it.
Many of us know the organization Gray Bull Rescue. They were very, very helpful with hurricane recovery. I actually was out with them with Steve Michelini's daughter, Francesca, in fact, and they do a lot of good work. One of the things which is just blows your mind, they helped get Venezuela's Maria Machado to escape safety from Oslo, Norway, and so I wanted to give them a Tampa City Council commendation outside of City Council, because we're going to do it sooner than later, to Gray Bull Rescue and United States Special Forces veteran Brian Stern for their work.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Then the next two are ordinances. Number one, so for a long time, I'd been pushing for the administration to do a comprehensive public safety master plan for both police and for fire. Ultimately, it came down, it's a long story, to something that was produced by the administration that was just funded just under the threshold of $100,000, so it didn't necessarily have to go through Tampa City Council. It would appear that there wasn't a lot of work with the applicable unions, whether it's the PBA or Local 754. So what I want to do is on March 5th is to have City Legal present an ordinance mandating, by virtue of law to the extent that we can, an annual public safety master plan review to be done by the administration, by and through ordinance in conjunction with the applicable first responder union presidents or their designees, so that we can have that as a matter of ordinance or law here in the city of Tampa, that it has to be done every year in cooperation, again, with the applicable public safety unions, because this is something that we want in the city of Tampa as we grow and to see what our needs are for both police and fire, and we want to make sure that it's done in the public, and that it's done, again, in working with the applicable advocates for the first responders. That's my motion.
So what is the action plan on that?
So to have staff present on the feasibility of an ordinance on March 5th.
Okay, feasibility. Okay, so we have a motion from Councilman Vieira, a second from Councilman
Just for
Maniscalco.
a
Okay,
review
for
of my
discussion.
mind. That has to do a lot with finances, am I correct?
Not necessarily proposals. In other words, I mean, the public safety master plan would simply say, our city needs a new fire station
Yeah, I
here.
understand that.
So on projection of
Yeah,
finances.
I understand, but if something happens to the city,
Mm-hmm.
like might happen with this Senate bill that's floating around regarding ad valorem taxation or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
then we're gonna have to find some new money somewhere. I'm all for that,
Mm-hmm.
but I gotta warn that there's a side to it, that if something happens in the
Yes.
funding, we may have a plan, but we may not have the money for that plan.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just telling you that I'm for it, but I gotta tell you that what's coming could come.
Yes, sir.
I'm okay with the feasibility.
Yes,
part.
ma'am, absolutely, yeah. And if I may, Madam Chair, for Board Member Miranda, so again, just like we had the Parks Master Plan.
Sure, I understand
it's
that, and
just a
I'm
vision.
for that. I voted for the plan, I guess, so yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Councilman Vieira and a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And
Okay.
then last, if I may, Madam Chair, is, so we've been talking about having a City of Tampa Veterans Advisory Committee. This morning, we had a very nice woman come from the Asian Pacific Advisory Committee for the City of Tampa. And I've been speaking with City Legal, as well as Mr. Shelby, my office, and others. We actually had a meeting with administration representatives and members of the veteran community on such a committee, and there was a lot of interest. And so therefore, what I want to do is, so that we get this thing moving. So guys, my vision is this is going to come back on, if we pass, on April 16th. Excuse me. And so we get it moving for the next administration, essentially, because there's going to be some liftoff. So this is my motion, is a motion for City Legal to return with an ordinance on April 16th of 2026 for a City of Tampa Veterans Committee. We can talk on whether or not it's a mayor's committee, a city council committee, whatever it may be, on that on April 16th.
Okay. I have a motion from Councilman Vieira, second from Councilman Maniscalco. Any comment? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you,
Okay.
Council.
Councilwoman Young.
Okay, so recently, I don't know if I think we mainly were all there, but there were at the firefighters ball. There were two young men that were recognized, and then the name were Shakur. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Shakur McCrone and Carnell Barton. They were recognized for. I can't remember the name of the award that they received, but they helped someone out of a house fire. And so I moved to make a motion to present a commendation on February 19, 2026 to Shakur McCrone and Carnell Barton for their extraordinary bravery and quick action in saving the life of a neighbor during a house fire. Their courage exemplifies the higher standards of community service. And I think it's really important that we, recognize young people in our communities that are going, above and beyond in doing things to, help their neighbors and to help their community. So I would love to be able to bring them here to recognize. Yep. So I would love to be able to have them here to recognize them. And then also, I just wanted to
Let's do a vote on this.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
So we have a motion from Councilwoman Young, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, recently, actually about this morning, there was something very tragic that happened within my district in the Sulphur Springs area. About 2 o'clock this morning, there was a young lady who was shot and killed. Over, I think maybe a day or two ago, also within my district, there was another shooting and a stabbing. And there was also, there's just been a couple of incidents that have happened within the district. And so I wanted to take a moment to recognize this young lady who, she's a teenager, still has a lot of life ahead of her. And, just as we talk about, improving, our neighborhoods and having opportunities for youth, that's why I speak so much about having opportunities and things for youth, so that we can continue to keep them engaged and keep them involved. But also, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that, and to recognize that young lady and send the well wishes to her family and also those that from the other incidents. And then also, I've been going around, been going to different neighborhood association meetings. Yesterday, I was at the Legacy of Fair Oaks neighborhood association meeting. And I really enjoy going to the association meetings because it's where I get a chance to really listen and talk to people and hear from, community. And I'm always very hopeful because you have a lot of people in our community within the district that really want to see some positive things happen in their neighborhood, and they are asking great questions and wanting to know, who do we talk to, how do we get this done, and what you need from us. And for me as a council member, that is really helpful because you have people that are really, really invested in their community. So I just wanted to bring that to let the neighborhood associations know that I've met with so far. I think I was at VME board as well, and a couple of other neighborhood associations. It's escaping me, but I just wanted to recognize them because they are doing some great work and wanting to really see some positive things happen in their community within our district. So that is all.
I love meeting with the neighborhood association. You've got the best neighborhood associations in your district.
Why,
It's always fun.
thank
I don't
you.
know. I mean, there's some good ones all over the city.
If I may.
Councilman Beer, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. No, I wanted to thank you, board member or council member Young, for your remarks on those tragedies that happened. We had Jay Johnson, who was here this morning with Rise Up for Peace. Yes. He lost his son, I believe it was on New Year's Eve. And of course, Bishop Michelle Patty has had similar tragedies in her life. And so, thank you for advocating for victims of crime, because that's too many times when things like that happen in certain parts of the city of Tampa, they don't get publicity. They don't. And so thank you for that.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Okay, so I have a couple different things. We briefly talked about, or in February, we're going to be talking about what was left over from FY25. We have, and we talked about this during the FY26 budget, that we need to start earlier for FY27. One of the things we need to solve is the social action and arts funding. I want to do that before 2027, so we're not spending a ton of time on $1 million versus the discussion on what we really need to be talking about, which is the rest of the $2 billion budget. So I moved to schedule a council discussion during the May 28th, 2026 workshop on the Social Action and Arts Fund. Specifically, what problems are we trying to solve? What are our goals? And we want to define grants versus donations and outsourcing. Which of these should be funded by the Social Action and Arts Fund monies? I have this written down, Sue Ling, so don't worry. But in the meantime, what I would ask Ms. Kopesky to reach out to each of us and kind of get our thoughts already and collate it so that she can lead this discussion, because this is a discussion between us as council. Right. It doesn't need the administration necessarily. They're welcome to come and listen, but I really think Ms. Kopesky can help lead this as she talks to each of us, kind of tries to figure out what our goals are and what we're trying to do. But really, I'm going to send her out with those three main questions of what actually are we trying to solve. We're not just handing out money, but what is the point? What are we trying to do? And so to kind of get a goal around that. So that's my first motion.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Then Ms. Scharf has been out this morning asking all of your aides what your availability is, because I want to schedule a meeting to discuss the FY25 budget before spring break, because I want the administration to know what our priorities are before they start to build a budget. Speaking about the youth, I mean, this is a great time to talk about that. So I moved to schedule a meeting to discuss the FY27 budget. This will be a meeting for City Council only to discuss our budget priorities. This meeting will be led by Ms. Kopesky, and I will work with her on the agenda, which of course she will reach out to all of you. But I wanted to talk to you about what kind of meeting we wanted to have for this. I would really love, like when I envision it, I would love the public to attend. I would like to do a special call evening meeting. This is the first of its kind. Mr. Shelby said he can't remember a time that council has ever done this. But I think that this is what we're hearing from the public. They're hearing they want to know where this money is going. So I'd really like to do a special call meeting. If that is amenable to you all, and I hear some nods, We have, again, Ms. Scharf talked to your aides, and it seems that March 3rd evening, which is a Monday night, March 3rd or March 9th in the morning, or March 10th, which is kind of iffy because we have the Herman Massey ribbon cutting, and that's a CRA thing. So we'd all kind of like to be to that. March 9th is a Tuesday. And that's why I actually brought out my phone. I never, ever have my phone on the dais. So, oh, and yikes, that was me with all the beeps. Sorry. That's why I don't have it on here. But again, she went to your staff and asked.
March 9th is good for me.
So March 3rd would be an evening meeting.
No, March 9th in the morning would.
Well, my
I would
concern
support.
is I didn't know if that was when Hart met.
Yeah, so. May I?
Yeah.
On that, so March 3rd, I have in the evening. March 9th, I have some depositions. And if I win a motion 3 weeks before that, I'm out of those depositions. So March 9th is maybe March 3rd in the evening I can do.
You can,
I
okay.
can, yeah, I am available March 3rd. March 9th is iffy, because I erroneously calendared something, Brandon. That was my fault. But yeah, March 3rd, I'm available in the evening.
March 3rd, I'm good.
I guess.
And our heart board meeting is the
Except
second.
Thursday, because I'm in city council.
I have the TSA but I'll be out by 4:45, 5 o'clock.
Okay, so I'd like to do this at 5 o'clock and just really make a big deal out of it and really get the public to come and tell us what they want.
And how long do you want this meeting?
Yeah, I want it to be in council chambers. It shouldn't be, I mean, I don't know, maybe 3 hours?
Okay, so we have a motion for a special call evening for 5 o'clock on March 3rd from Councilwoman Hurtak.
And that's a Monday?
It's a Tuesday night, and I moved to schedule, so this is specifically to talk about the FY27 budget. Again, Ms. Capessi's gonna lead it. Staff can be here to listen, but really, I just kind of want us to be able to throw out ideas, to talk to each other. I know the administration in the past has come to us each individually, but to kind of just talk holistically and to hear from the public. Do they want, we have a lot of money in paving right now, but where else do they want that money? Do they want it specific? We've heard a lot from parks people. We've heard a lot about sidewalks. We've heard a lot about stormwater. So where do they want us to spend the money so that when it comes to us?
Keep your hands off my paving.
Well, I'm not saying that. I said we've got a lot of money in paving right now. We might not need to move more.
Right.
But just, again, and nothing's like set in stone, but that way we send something to the administration saying this is what we'd like to see. And again, Ms. Kopeski will reach out to each of you to help shepherd this. This is a brand new thing. We can just make it what we want.
If I may.
So we have the motion. Did we have a second?
Yes. If not, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second from Councilman. Okay, so Councilman Young second. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is this just speaking to scheduling the special meeting?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Garcia.
If I may, thank you, sir. So, may we have a proposed time cutoff of,
Yeah,
let's
I
say,
said
8:15?
eight. I said
Okay,
eight,
there
yeah.
you go.
Like
Okay,
3
I'm good
hours?
with that.
That's good. 5 to 8.
That's good.
Excuse me, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. It's a Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
Correct? And it is March 3rd, 2026. It's going to be in Chambers.
Yes.
And it's a special call workshop?
Yes.
Is that the way you would
Yeah.
describe it? Okay, and it's going to be specifically from 5 to 8 p.m.
Yes.
And you confirm Council Chambers is free. Councilman Young, you wanted to speak to this issue?
Oh, yeah, I just want to say, I think that's a great idea. And one of the things I always say is collaboration, and that is a way to collaborate with your constituents and community and actually listening. So I think that's a fantastic idea. And maybe a way for people to see that we are a little bit more alike in our thinking than what we may think. So I think it would be great to have everybody together in one space.
Did you want to speak?
No, Tuesdays, no, I'll make it work.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you all so much. I'm really excited about this, and we can just kind of make it what we want it to be.
Councilman Maniscalco, do you have any new business?
No, I do not.
Councilman Miranda, do you have any new business? Microphone.
I would like to make a motion to present a commendation to the medal winners of the 2025-2026 USA Post 5 American Legion Oratorical Contest. The medals that they have received are a reflection of their keen interest and the appreciation of the principles and values outlined in the Constitution of the United States and their awareness of the responsibility of the incumbent on each citizen to exercise their rights, to protect these rights. I would like to make the presentation combination beginning our evening section of March 12th, 2026 at 5:01.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Miranda, second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
And I hope the federal government is listening.
Thank you. Anything else, sir?
That's it.
Okay.
Okay, I recognize Chair Clendenin.
I have several things.
Yeah, you have a bunch.
Yes.
You gave us this lovely memo.
I know. We have a lot of things.
Yes.
Eloquent.
Actually, it was really well written.
Thank you, Mr. Shelby.
Yes, well, he's good.
He is good. Well, I won't go that far. And this is in discussion. We've already given a hint to this from the previous conversations about the workshop. And for the interest of clarity, I make a motion that the agenda item CM 25-10252 on Council's January 29th, 2026 workshop agenda be retitled from Biannual Capital Improvement Project Report and Presentation to South Howard Flood Relief Project Presentation and Biannual Capital Improvement Project Written Report. Further, that staff be requested to limit the presentation to focus on South Howard Flood Project while the accompanied written report continues to update the other major projects.
Second.
I have a motion from Chair Clendenin, a second from Councilman Miranda. And
all those in favor?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all good, but the council member who disagrees is no longer with us. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Very good. And I make a motion to ask staff.
Actually, before you go to that,
Yes.
could I would still personally like to see a motion about seeing if staff could have a couple of workshops scheduled by next Thursday, some public outreach meetings, because I think that would be very helpful in
In the interest of like communication?
Yeah, I think that by next Thursday, if we could ask.
How about I'll add that to another motion after?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you could make a separate motion about that,
Okay.
I would feel better, and I
Okay.
think all of us would feel better.
Especially with the expanded scope of the project.
Correct. I think that we need to have a couple of dates and places that people can finish watching this. If they can't join us, they can watch it later and then hear where they can find out more information at these dates and these times.
Sounds good. Okay, so I make a motion to ask staff to prepare a financial resolution that reappropriates the projected remaining amount within the Lower Peninsula Watershed Stormwater Capital Project to the South Howard Flood Relief and Streetscape Capital Project and bring it to Council's consideration during the January 29th, 2026 evening meeting. And just for FYI, that was the motion. FYI, that meeting, there's only 3 AB cases. There's a few comp plan amendments. One of them is probably going to be continued.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion from Chair Clendenin, a second from Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay, so
Motion carried with Maniscalco voting no and Carlson being absent.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I was out of the room. It's for adding.
move the
Prepare
financial
a financial
resolution.
resolution to the 29th evening meeting. Okay.
Sir.
Of January?
Yes.
Yes. So Councilman Maniscalco.
So as I learned about this through social media, was this what was going to be proposed at the February 5th
Yes.
meeting? Okay, thanks.
Okay. And just FYI, I'm not going to be at the February 5th.
No, I understand.
Yeah. Okay, as the next thing is the reference to the CRC issue. I have a motion to, you all are in receipt of the memo that we sent. I work closely with legal staff, the facilitator, the attorney for the CRC, and of course, Mr. Shelby. And in light of that, in that memo that I've sent, I move to not amend the resolution number 2025-1044 and adopt this memorandum of the chair dated January 21st, 2026 as the policy of the Tampa City Council and direct it to be relayed back to the Charter Review Advisory Commission.
Second, and I have a question.
Yes,
So
sir.
per your memo, what you're saying with this is to remind the board, these are the rules regarding majority votes and unanimous vote. Okay, so go by the guidelines and don't try to change that.
Yeah,
Second.
Yeah, okay, we have I'm sorry.
And to not widen the scope.
Right,
That was
key.
That was very important,
Yeah.
to not widening the scope.
And and this was in light, I'll tell you, because I did not sit on the Charter Review Commission last time, but Councilman Carlson and Councilwoman Hurtek did. I've listened to what they had to say about their experiences during that experience, and I think we all did, and that's what in that workshop of crafting these rules, was really weighed heavy on their experience, and that's why we did what we did, okay?
Well, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad we did it now and didn't wait. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So we have a motion from Chair Clendenin, second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. And
Okay.
that's it.
Move to
Okay.
receive and file.
We have a motion to receive and.
Second.
Oh, is it a commendation?
Oh, no, 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 it's not that. It's,
Okay, this is your birthday present.
there you go. So it's not that, it's actually I don't think, I mean, just to start thinking about this, we're gonna be asked a big thing by the Rays, okay? Like,
Well-
maybe we should set, and I don't wanna get anything, I mean, please, you can obviously
I
say
think
whatever.
We're putting the cart in
But,
front of the horse.
yeah, but in other words, we'll start thinking about maybe setting times aside. I'm not gonna start to get into my thoughts about it, but we should certainly dedicate special time for that in council. That's all, because that's a
For
big
future
deal.
deliberation.
Oh,
Okay, we have a motion to receive and file from Councilman Maniscalco. We have a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. I have a bunch of documents to sign.